Clint Eastwood's dramas and romances. Clint Eastwood. For decades, he's been the man with the squint, the gunslinger who didn't need many words, the hard-edged cop who'd rather bend the rules than follow them. But what happens when the six-shooter is holstered, the streets are quiet, and Clint steps into something more fragile, something deeply human? Behind the legend of westerns and action thrillers lies another Clint Eastwood, one who wasn't afraid to show heartbreak, loneliness, obsession, and love. From tender romances that shocked audiences to award-winning dramas that redefined his career, these are the films where Clint Eastwood traded bullets for feelings, and sometimes the emotional impact was even more devastating. So let's step into a side of Eastwood that often gets overshadowed, the dramas and romances that reveal the man behind the myth. The story of Eastwood's dramas begins where it all started. His directorial debut, Play Misty for Me, wasn't just a thriller, it was a gamble. Up until then, Eastwood was the strong, silent type. He had made his name with Sergio Leone's westerns and the tough-as-nails Dirty Harry. Audiences expected squints, standoffs, and shootouts. What they didn't expect was a psychological drama about love, jealousy, and obsession. In Misty, Clint plays Dave, a radio DJ who thinks he's just having a casual fling. But when Evelyn, played by Jessica Walter, decides she's not just another one-night stand, things spiral into obsession and danger. It's messy, emotional, and personal, completely different from his previous work. For Eastwood, directing this film was more than proving he could be behind the camera. It was a statement. He wasn't going to be locked into just westerns or cops. He wanted to explore the darker corners of relationships, the parts that weren't simple or safe. Audiences were stunned. Here was Clint Eastwood, not just dodging bullets, but confronting something far scarier, a woman's unrelenting obsession. It wasn't romance in the fairy tale sense. It was romance as a weapon, romance twisted into danger, and it marked the beginning of Eastwood's journey into more complex emotional territory. Fast forward a decade, and Eastwood tried something softer, something almost sweet. Honkytonk Man is one of those hidden gems in his filmography. Clint plays Red Stovall, a Depression-era country singer chasing one last shot at fame before tuberculosis takes him down. Alongside him is his real-life son, Kyle Eastwood, playing his nephew. At first glance, it looks like a road trip movie. A man, a boy, a guitar, and a dusty trail through America. But underneath the surface, it's a story about dreams, disappointment, and family bonds. And yes, romance does play a role. Red Stovall isn't a knight in shining armor. He's flawed, weak at times, but still chasing human connection. This film shocked some audiences. Critics weren't sure what to do with it. It didn't have the box office firepower of a Dirty Harry or a Western. But over time, Honkytonk Man has earned respect for its gentle tone and emotional undercurrents. For Clint, it was another reminder that he wasn't content to play the same role over and over. He was willing to take risks, even if it meant slowing things down, adding humor, and letting vulnerability onto the screen. It wasn't a smash hit, but it showed that Eastwood's range wasn't just wide, it was surprising. If there's one film that forever changed how audiences saw Clint Eastwood, it was The Bridges of Madison County. By the mid-1990s, Clint had already solidified himself as a Hollywood icon, Western legend, action star, tough cop, and even respected director. But in 1995, at age 65, he shocked everyone by stepping into the most unlikely role of his career, a romantic lead. Based on Robert James Waller's best-selling novel, the film tells the story of Francesca, played by Meryl Streep, a lonely Italian housewife in rural Iowa. Her quiet, predictable life is turned upside down when a National Geographic photographer, Robert Kincaid, played by Clint, rolls into town. For 4 days, they share a connection so powerful, it reshapes the rest of their lives. What made Bridges extraordinary wasn't just the story, it was how Clint approached it. Instead of a young, fiery romance, the film leaned into maturity, longing, and the bittersweet reality of choices. Clint wasn't the rugged cowboy here. He was vulnerable, gentle, a man defined not by violence, but by tenderness. Critics were floored. Meryl Streep earned an Oscar nomination for her role, and Clint proved he could carry a sweeping love story just as convincingly as a shootout. Audiences embraced it too. The film was a box office hit and remains one of his most beloved performances. For many, Bridges of Madison County is Clint Eastwood's ultimate romance, a reminder that even the toughest legends have a softer side, and in some ways it was more daring than any Western standoff, because it required Clint to lay down the armor and simply be human. 8 years later, Clint would once again shock the world, but this time not by starring but by directing. Mystic River was a raw, harrowing drama about childhood trauma, crime, and the ripple effects of violence. Starring Sean Penn, Tim Robbins, and Kevin Bacon, the film followed three childhood friends whose lives collide in the wake of a family tragedy. What made Mystic River stand out wasn't just its story, it was its weight. Clint's direction gave the film a haunting stillness. Every shot felt heavy, every silence loaded with meaning. He let the actors carry the raw emotion, stepping back and giving the story room to breathe. The result? A modern masterpiece. Sean Penn and Tim Robbins both won Academy Awards for their performances, and Clint Eastwood himself was nominated for Best Director. For Clint, Mystic River marked a turning point. It proved that he wasn't just dabbling in drama, he was redefining it for a new generation. He had become not only a movie star, but also a director who could command respect at the highest level of Hollywood. If Bridges of Madison County showed his vulnerable side, Mystic River proved his dramatic authority. He wasn't just making films, he was making art. If 2003 was a triumph, 2004 was an explosion. Just a year after Mystic River, Clint Eastwood delivered $1 Million Baby, a film that would earn him some of the highest honors in cinema. At first glance, it looks like a boxing movie. Hilary Swank plays Maggie Fitzgerald, a determined young woman who dreams of becoming a professional fighter. Clint plays Frankie Dunn, the grizzled, reluctant trainer, who eventually takes her under his wing. Morgan Freeman rounds out the trio as Scrap, a retired boxer and narrator of the story. But $1 Million Baby isn't really about boxing. It's about ambition, family, love, and the devastating weight of loss. It's about the bond between a mentor and a student, one that becomes as strong as family and just as heartbreaking. The film's second half blindsided audiences. What began as an underdog sports story transformed into a devastating moral drama that asked impossible questions about dignity, sacrifice, and love in the face of tragedy. Hollywood took notice. The film swept the Oscars, winning Best Picture, Best Director for Clint, Best Actress for Hilary Swank, and Best Supporting Actor for Morgan Freeman. At age 74, Clint Eastwood had just delivered one of the most emotionally powerful films of the decade. With $1 Million Baby, Clint wasn't just proving he could make dramas, he was proving he could make them unforgettable. By the late 2000s, Clint Eastwood was well into his 70s. Many actors and directors would have slowed down, choosing smaller projects or stepping away from the spotlight. But Clint, he was about to enter one of the most prolific phases of his career. In 2008, he directed Changeling, a haunting drama based on real events from 1920s Los Angeles. Angelina Jolie starred as Christine Collins, a mother whose son disappears, only to be returned with a different child by corrupt police. Her desperate fight for truth exposes not just a personal tragedy, but systemic corruption and injustice. The film is drenched in period detail, but it's not nostalgia, it's tension. Clint's direction emphasized silence, stillness, and the raw anguish of a parent denied justice. Jolie's performance earned her an Oscar nomination, and the film reminded audiences that Eastwood wasn't afraid to tackle disturbing, uncomfortable truths. For Clint, Changeling was another evolution. While earlier dramas had focused on personal struggles and redemption, this was a story of institutional failure, public betrayal, and one woman's resilience. It showed that his sense of drama wasn't limited to intimate moments. It could also confront massive historical wrongs. And perhaps most impressive, Eastwood directed Changeling at age 78, proving that his creative fire wasn't just alive, it was blazing. If Changeling showed Eastwood's power as a director, Gran Torino reminded the world of his power as an actor. Released the same year, Gran Torino starred Clint as Walt Kowalski, a grumpy retired auto worker and Korean War veteran. He's bitter, isolated, and weighed down by prejudice. His prized possession, a 1972 Ford Gran Torino, becomes the unlikely catalyst for a bond with his Hmong neighbors, especially a young teenager named Thao. What begins as a story of resentment slowly transforms into one of mentorship, sacrifice, and unexpected redemption. Audiences were riveted. The film made over $270 million worldwide, an enormous box office success. Critics praised Eastwood's performance, calling it one of his best late-career roles. Walt Kowalski was a man hardened by war and time, but also capable of change. And the ending, without giving too much away, was classic Clint, a quiet standoff, a moment of sacrifice, and a resolution that spoke louder than any gunshot. For many fans, Gran Torino felt like a closing chapter. Clint himself hinted it might be his final acting role. It had all the hallmarks of a farewell, an aging legend confronting his past, seeking peace, and passing something on to the next generation. Of course, Eastwood didn't fully retire, but Gran Torino cemented his reputation not just as a tough guy, but as a dramatic actor, capable of raw honesty and emotional depth. It was a film about endings, but also about transformation, and it showed that even in his late 70s, Clint Eastwood could still surprise the world. By the 2010s, Clint Eastwood wasn't just an actor or a director, he was an institution. His name alone could elevate a project, and his reputation as a storyteller was unmatched. What fascinated him most during this era wasn't gunslingers or cops, it was real people, under unimaginable pressure. In Sully, Clint told the story of Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger, the pilot who famously landed a disabled plane on the Hudson River, saving everyone on board. Tom Hanks starred as Sully, and the film explored not just the heroic landing, but the scrutiny and doubt that followed. Clint approached the story with trademark restraint. There were no overblown Hollywood dramatics, just a quiet, methodical look at how one man's instincts changed history. It was another example of Eastwood's mature style, simple, direct, and deeply human. Then in 2019, Clint returned to similar territory with Richard Jewell. The film told the story of the security guard who discovered a bomb at the 1996 Atlanta Olympics and was initially hailed as a hero, only to be wrongly accused of planting it. Once again, Clint explored the fragility of reputation and the injustice of flawed systems. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't easy, but it was powerful. Together, Sully and Richard Jewell showed Eastwood's late career obsession with everyday heroes, ordinary people caught in extraordinary circumstances. They weren't action stars, they weren't cowboys, they were human beings, and Clint gave their stories the dignity they deserved. At age 91, most people would be long retired. Clint Eastwood, he was still acting, still directing, still telling stories. Cry Macho felt like a curtain call, part Western, part road movie, part reflective drama. The film followed Mike Milo, an aging rodeo star sent on a journey to bring back a boy from Mexico. Along the way, Mike confronts his own regrets, failures, and the meaning of strength. The title itself, Cry Macho, was almost ironic. After a lifetime of playing tough guys, Clint delivered a story about vulnerability, about letting go of the illusion of toughness, about embracing gentleness. It was as if Eastwood himself was speaking through the role, acknowledging the myth of masculinity he had embodied for decades while quietly dismantling it. Critics were divided, but many fans saw it for what it was, a farewell, a meditation, a man looking back at a career and life lived at full speed. Cry Macho may not have been a blockbuster, but it was deeply personal, and it closed this chapter of Clint's career with grace. From obsession in play Misty, for me to the heartbreaking love of Bridges of Madison County, from the Oscar-winning weight of Mystic River and Million Dollar Baby, to the quiet heroism of Sully and Richard Jewell, and finally, to the reflective farewell of Cry Macho, Clint Eastwood's dramas and romances show us something rare. They remind us that even the toughest legends aren't defined by their guns, their fists, or their squints. They're defined by their humanity. Eastwood may be forever remembered as the man with no name, or as Dirty Harry, but these films prove he was also a man, unafraid to explore love, loss, heartbreak, and redemption. A man who, even in his 90s, was still willing to peel back the layers of myth and show the fragile heart beneath. And maybe that's the greatest twist of all. After a lifetime of playing icons, Clint Eastwood's most unforgettable roles may be the ones where he simply played a man. And that wraps up Clint Eastwood's journey through dramas and romances. If you enjoyed seeing this side of Eastwood, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next part of our Clint Eastwood series, where we dive into more hidden gems and legendary performances. And if you want to catch up, check out our Clint Eastwood playlist right here on screen. From his classic westerns to his action thrillers, it's the full ride through a Hollywood icon's career. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.